thoughts, all questions, all everything, and then we'll do a round with the counselors. Okay, so in order of arrival, Counselor Flynn.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards, and want to say thank you to you, Councilor Edwards, for the important work you are doing, working closely with Sheila Dillon and Tim and Brian and Chris English as well, and the Mayor Walsh's team. I'll be very brief. Just want to say I support this proposal. I want to make it, I want to strengthen it like we all do, and looking forward to seeing what we can do to provide more protections for our seniors, persons with disabilities, our immigrant neighbors, making sure Boston is a city for all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Councilor Flaherty.
Same sentiment. Thank you, Madam Chair, for your work in this space, and not just during your tenure as a city council, but also your life prior to this and your advocacy around affordable housing. It's the issue that we struggle with as a city, and as an at-large councilor, I see it in every single neighborhood. So we are blessed to have the team that we have in our city with under the leadership of Sheila Dillon and Tim and their team there. So look forward to working on this and to continue to improve the quality for folks that are being faced with eviction. We have a responsibility as a government to try to protect our residents and neighbors and keep them in their homes, particularly those that were born and raised in neighborhoods and through no fault of their own, through speculation and investment, they're being squeezed, and/or their property where they were a tenant is flipped and has a new owner that has great plans, and these rents continue to creep up. So anything we can do to keep people in their homes and to give them whatever support they can as tenants being evicted, sign me up. So appreciate the work you're doing and look forward to this hearing.
Thank you. Councilor Brady.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your leadership. And I also want to thank the team for all their great hard work. I have no idea how much work has gone into this, but I know it's a lot, and I really appreciate all that effort. And I really, I want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues that this is critically important in protecting folks who are vulnerable to eviction and displacement by condo conversion. So that's all I have to say. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. So we'll just let you go ahead and Sheila and go through everyone. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss it? Did we get joined by somebody?
Yeah, sorry, Councilor Edwards, if I might.
Here, Councilor Bach, please.
Yeah, sorry to be late. I will be brief. I will echo everybody's thanks. This is essential. I think we underestimate sometimes how much a difference friction can make. And what I mean by that is actually, like, sometimes people talk about housing in our city and especially displacement and loss of affordable units like it's inevitable and, oh, it'll happen no matter what, and whatever condo conversion law you have, like, people will convert, like this is some sort of inexorable force. But in fact, like, sometimes adding that friction and saying, no, you know what, there's going to be like a lot of costs and steps, et cetera, if you're going to pursue a course that's going to cause people to have to move out of their long-term homes, that discourages people who want to do that. And it really, it saves real families from being displaced. And so I think that's the impact of this ordinance has been in the city previously, but I think it can be stronger on that front. And I'm really grateful to everyone in the agencies and to Councilor Edwards for all the work. And I think I've seen everybody on this screen in some kind of meeting this week. So I do want to thank you for your extensive work on a host of fronts, and also Mac, who's still the best, and technically coming out of retirement, although it doesn't feel like you ever left this work, Mac. So, but thank you, Councilor Edwards, and very happy to be here for this working session.
Thank you. All right, so Sheila.
So yeah, I will be so brief, and then I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Tim Davis. But I really am excited to be here. It has been a long time to get to this point, and I do appreciate the counselor, your patience and your continued interest in this effort. We are here to extend the condo conversion ordinance, but we know that it wasn't strong enough. It had too many loopholes, and it needed to be strengthened. And I think it really, every time I see a building that it screams out vacant, vacant, that is like a premium when owners are putting things on the market. And it screams out to me either, rents are going to go way up or it's going to be converted to condominiums more easily. So I think what we're going to hear, what we're discussing here today is going to make a difference for tenants, and it's going to make harder to displace them to achieve a condo conversion. But Tim, I want to thank Tim for all of his work on this all summer long, and hand it over to him to kind of go through some of the details and our best thinking on it. Thank you so much.
Chairperson Edwards, members of the council, thank you for considering this important ordinance today. For the record, I'm Tim Davis, Deputy Director for Policy Development and Research at the City of Boston Department of Neighborhood Development. I'm happy to be here today to discuss the existing ordinance and the proposed changes that the Walsh administration has worked on in concert with Councilor Edwards and Mac McCrate from Greater Boston Legal Services. First, I think it would be useful to understand the scale of conversions in Boston. 216 buildings were converted in 2020, down 8% from 2019. 580 rental units were converted to condos in 2020, down 7% from 2019. This represents less than 1 unit for every 330 rental units in Boston. In 2020, the neighborhoods with the highest number of buildings converted were East Boston and Dorchester, but the highest number of units converted were in East Boston, Dorchester, and South Boston. The condominium conversion ordinance was first established in 1999 and provides for the following in properties with 4 or more units: 1-year notification of conversion to most tenants, 5-year notice to low, moderate income tenants, the elderly, and those with a disability. It provides for relocation benefits and for eligible tenants, housing search assistance. It is my belief that this ordinance has discouraged many landlords of larger buildings from converting to condominiums, as we only have to look back to the wave of speculative condo conversions that hit neighborhoods in the late 1980s and early 1990s, in particular the Fenway and Alston Brighton, where there were no such tenants' rights, to see the difference. The effectiveness of the current ordinance can also be seen in what is converted, because the State Enabling Act does not allow us to address conversion of 1, 2, and 3 unit properties. These properties constituted 87% of buildings and 76% of the units converted in 2020. As a result, in 2020, the conversion of there were 26 buildings containing 140 units that were covered by the current ordinance. Despite this limitation, there are improvements we can and should make. Under the current ordinance, there is no process to assure that tenants are informed of their rights in a timely fashion. The recourse for tenants is in housing court. There is no city agency that oversees conversions, and there is no look back, and owners are emptying out buildings and then beginning the conversion process. In order to address these deficiencies, the 2021 revision calls for a condominium conversion permit system, which will assure that tenants know their rights and owners and do not try to skirt the law. This permit process is as follows. Anyone seeking to convert a 4+ unit building to condos must provide notice to the tenants. The notification must include language that the Office of Housing Stability will have publicly available on its website. They will also have to notify the Office of Housing Stability at the same time. The owner must establish a conversion plan with the Office of Housing Stability as part of this process, the OHS will be able to determine tenant eligibility for enhanced benefits, determine if there was a building clear out, and assure that all tenants receive the benefits provided for under this ordinance. Once the requirements of the conversion plan are fulfilled, they may apply for a conversion permit from the Inspectional Services Department. This permit will allow for the sale of units, and given the power ISD holds, can fine any owner who does not follow the process properly. In addition to this permitting process, the ordinance increases the relocation benefits from $10,000 to $15,000 for eligible tenants who are those 62 and older, disabled, and or have income of less than 80% of area median income. For all other tenants, the relocation benefits is increased from $6,000 to $10,000. This increase reflects the high costs of Boston rents and relocation costs. Tenants also have a right to purchase their unit. This ordinance clarifies this process and gives tenants 120 days instead of 90 days to sign a purchase and sales agreement. Again, thank you for your consideration of this matter. and I'm happy to answer any questions. Chris English is also here from Inspectional Services. I'm not sure if he has anything further to say or if he's just here. I believe he's here mostly on standby for any of your questions. I guess that's correct. So thank you. We'll move on to, and I think, Brian, if you have something to say, thank you.
Thanks, Tim. I don't have any prepared remarks for today. Just to be here as a resource. I would note that I started my career with the City of Boston in consumer affairs, doing landlord-tenant issues back in 1985 with then Mayor Flynn, and I don't know what that means that I'm here working on this with his son now. But if you see a Flynn grandkid around, would you please show me the door and just get me out of here?
I think then we can go to Matt.
Hi, thank you very much, councilors. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you again. I know that we first engaged in this process in 2019, and we had gotten fairly far in a conversation then, but we realized that we probably should wait because there were a new group of councilors that were coming in to give them the opportunity to take a look at all this. And then the pandemic hit. So it took us a bit longer to get this all done. And I know that because of that, we had the council had to extend beyond the 1 year extension. You had to do a little bit further extensions just to get this all rolled together. I think the process and the final product has really benefited from all the working sessions that you've done. There have each been contributions that different councilors have made to this draft. For example, Councilor Bach had a suggestion about, where condo conversion was happening in order to do a financing scheme as part of preserving affordable housing, that might be an exception. There's language that Councilor Mejia asked to make sure that we got in, to make sure that the notices were in languages that people could understand and that the Office of Housing Stability played a role. And I think everybody kind of drilled down to figuring out, well, how are we going to make the mechanics of this work, both to make sure there was a good notice system and a responsive consumer relationship with the public that was affected by this, as well as a good permitting system. And so having the two-tier system of having then the plan and the notification system with OHS and ISD, I know it took a little while. There had to be a few conversations to work out those details, but I think it all works fairly well and will be a good system going forward. I do very much appreciate the leadership that everyone's taken, particularly in focusing on the fact that we had issues where buildings would get cleared out and then we wouldn't know about it afterwards. And so doing the look back provision, making sure we have the documentation when units come in, all will help. I will just once again emphasize, and I can't agree more with what Councilor Bach said. I agree that the whole issue about putting in some friction and slowing down some processes helps redirect people. We do need to also watch the other fronts, because I do know that sometimes displacement will happen through someone originally thinking, I'll condo convert. Oh no, I'll change it to luxury housing. And then there may not be restrictions around that because the city hasn't been given enabling authority in that area. So we'll need to be creative in figuring out other things, but I very much appreciate the opportunity to work with this team. The other person who's not here today who really had a real contribution to this was Adam Setterbaum. He really worked hard on working on all the drafts, and I just wanted to do a shout out to him. Thanks.
Oh, I really appreciate that. I just want to make sure I'm clear in terms of the permit application. Is there any way that the permits, because we control permits, I think, that the permits that we created for this condo conversion, that they could apply to any condo conversion and not just in buildings 4 units or more? Why, you ask? Because as one of the limits that we have is that condo conversions only apply all the benefits, the money, okay, the right of first refusal, the notice, all of those other things only apply per permission from the state for 4-unit buildings or higher. There was one question we had from Liz, which was, what if you're converting from a 3 to a 4-unit building? That was that question. I don't know that we've answered that yet. That's one. And then the other one is, since we create what we're going to permit or not, since I don't believe you need enabling laws to allow for us to create a permit. Why wouldn't we interpret this so that the new permit applies to everybody who is creating a condominium that was formerly not a condo? Two questions that I have, and just letting people know, the reason why we're also doing this is, time is of the essence. We have till about March 31st on this extension to pass this. But those two questions, for everyone to know, I fully support this. Even if those questions aren't completely answered, I do support this. I want this to get done, but I still don't know. Like, if someone goes from 3 to 5 units in condos, that happens, right? They tear down the 3-deckers all the time in East Boston, then put in 4, 5, 6 units.
Yeah, I think I can start with the easy part of the question is that if the property is already not 4 units, then it doesn't qualify. It has to start out as 4 units. Now, Mac, I think you can speak to the reason why we're not addressing smaller properties at all in this legislation. I mean, I could probably put forth something, but I think Mac could probably say it in a more legalese. You can kind of fish out the legal context for that.
Yeah, the problem is that the only vehicle we have for this is Chapter 527 of the Acts of 1983 as amended, and that limits us to buildings with 4 or more units in it. At one point, when the city had rent control authority, the city could do smaller buildings. They could do 3 units. If the enabling law were different, we could regulate something else. But that's the problem we have. And then there's, Supreme Court jurisdiction that says this is regulation of a civil relationship. And so in order to do it, you have to have home rule authority, some sort or another. That being said, I know that the council, when we had one of the working sessions before, talked about maybe at the same time doing some kind of parallel thing about notification to residents, kind of modeled on what you had done with the housing stability notice for the smaller buildings where there were conversions. And I think you can probably do that based on the same rationale you did with the stability notice, because then it's more, the city is then doing planning and figuring out what is the advanced planning we are doing for those individuals. But it wouldn't be the same kind of regulation where you could say we can deny a permit outright. And I think we probably shouldn't slow down this process by drafting all that right now, but I do remember you mentioned that in one of your earlier sessions.
Right. But this is further in the weeds, and I pull further back up. I understand that a lot of the benefits attached. Let me ask this question. Are you saying the ability to regulate condominiums and permit them is only given to us by Chapter 537?
By Chapter 527, yes, generally speaking.
So for example, we could not be creating this permitting process. Take everything else that has to do with this away. Just focus on ISD. We couldn't create a permitting process in the city of Boston under our own laws and regulations on condos or on, is that what you're saying?
not on condos specifically. If you were to do something that was related to, for example, how do you do repair work in a building and, applying it specifically to condos? Yes, because that would be part of your public health and public safety schemes that you already kind of have in play. But there were a couple of communities that tried to do this in the early 80s, and the SJC struck them down. And that was why the state legislature eventually had like more than 20 communities that ran at them trying to get home rule bills. And they folded them all together into one enabling law and said, you can do this. And then if you're a community that wants something different than this, get a 2/3 vote, do your emergency declaration, and you can do something that's a little bit better or different than this. But that was the box they put everybody in.
Okay, because I had hoped that because ISD's normal jurisdiction is about safety, sanitation, and that alone, the ability to create permitting for safety, sanitation regulations should be enough to allow for this permit to apply condos in general throughout the city. And the reason why is because there's a huge gap. Majority of condo conversions happen in 2 and 3 building, in 4 units or less.
Yeah.
So, but maybe that's subject to a lawsuit or subject to interpretation after this is law. Okay. So those are my two questions. I'm going to go in order of arrival. Councillor Flynn. Maybe you might be on mute. I'm going to just go ahead and go to Councillor Flaherty. Councillor Flaherty also might be. It may have been called away on something.
I think they both left.
Councillor Braden.
I think you've answered my question about it has to be more than 4 or more units. I agree with you, Councillor Edwards. The units that I worry about are the 2 and 3 families that are chopped up and made into 6 units or more. And if there isn't a remedy for that in this, then we have to sort of maybe think of other ways to go at it. But I accept that. I don't have any other comments at this point, other questions.
Thank you. Councillor Bach.
Thanks so much, Madam Chair. I think I don't have too many sort of questions about the language. I've read through it and it kind of makes sense, but I wondered if we could just talk a little bit. I think the last time we had a working session on this, it was prior to D&D and ISD kind of having checked in detail on it. And I was just wondering if maybe, and this might be kind of directed primarily to Chris English, if you could just talk us through sort of how ISD is thinking about implementation of this, and what, if anything, kind of you changed in that process, and sort of and what the kind of like ways in which maybe it's been matched to other things that you do right now, or sort of where it would fall in your structure. Just give us a bit more of a sense of, because we are putting a new thing in your agency, and I think it would be good for the council to understand what it looks like and how you're seeing it working.
Sure. I'd say a 2-part response to that would be, I think in the immediate interim, when the ordinance is adopted or passed, we implement an interim permitting system, similar to how we stood up the short-term rental registration and application process. More of a quick thing, because this does, go into effect immediately upon passage, right? And then while we develop a more comprehensive permitting system to tie it into our main Hanson permitting universe, which is currently undergoing a major upgrade, the first time in probably 10 years. So we're not really able to make comprehensive changes to that until that upgrade, completes. So we would do something more immediate, where it's a online application. I think working together with D&D and housing stability, fine tune the process so that we could rely on both departments' unique skills, right? So we're a permitting and an enforcement agency. Housing stability is really more focused on housing, right? So using them to review applications and plans, to provide notice to tenants, to ensure that all of that work is going on, allows us to really focus on the application, the issuance, and the enforcement process. So I think we're prepared. We've been in conversations with D&D about this for quite some time, so we know this new system is coming for us sort of administratively. We, on the enforcement side and the hearing side, I know there are provisions to provide for administrative hearings in a lot of cases here. We do have administrative hearing officers on staff that hear appeals for most of our violations, and particularly the short-term rental ones. So we're ready for that. And just on issuing of fines, that we specialize in that. So I think we're prepared to do it.
Great, thank you. That's helpful. And I don't know if anyone from D&D wanted to add anything about kind of like anything that came out of that process that sort of has been fine-tuned from your perspective.
Yeah, I would just add, we had multiple meetings with Chris and Dion about division of labor, and it became clear to us that OHS has got to really, collect all of the information where the notices provided, were they done properly, is a look back possible, really create a file, and then notify ISD that we feel very comfortable with everything that we have, received, reviewed, and we feel very good about that, and checking in with the tenants when necessary. And I think ISD said, okay, great, then we will act upon your certification. We'll act upon your review. And once we did that, it felt like it all made more sense than ISD going through all of, reams of tenant notices and things, which it's really not their skill set. So I think there is a good division of labor. Now we just need to make it operational.
And I would add, there are other permit types that require outside agencies to weigh in on them before ISD issues permits, Conservation Commission, BPDA, water and sewer, that type of the landmarks. So we do already have an existing process in place with outside agencies that require sign off from them before we actually issue permits. So I think we're comfortable with that.
Great. And from a cost perspective, like, do you guys have a sense of what the kind of like scale of this is, and what additional staff capacity might be needed, and kind of how, you're talking to the council, so it's a good time to
It's cost neutral.
I will say that if the numbers are any like our previous years, it's generally 20 to 25 buildings per year, 140 to as many 200 units a year. But I think you are correct that the additional friction provided by this bill may make that a lower number. So it's somewhat, and although OHS will be primarily responsible on the D&D side, we also have staff here who have expertise on relocation, who can kind of provide some of their expertise on how this is going to be set up as well.
Great, thanks. I think those are my main questions, Madam Chair.
Okay. So just wanted to make sure, I don't know if all the counselors got the kind of comparison back and forth about the differences between the proposed ordinance and the I'm not sure if anyone got any back and forth. I was just going to do that as a kind of a walkthrough for the public to make sure that they understand what is and isn't changing. And I think, yes, okay. So, and correct me if I'm wrong. So again, the jurisdiction of the law is going to stay the same. It's for buildings that are as they exist, 4 units or more. That does not change. There are currently, in the current law, tenants eligible for additional notification and benefits. Those are low to moderate income folks that make less than 80% of the AMI, disabled individuals, and elderly people who are 62 or more. That is unchanged, the class of people who are going to be qualifying for this. What is changing, and those eligible tenants get the following benefits: a 5-year notice, which they would still be able to have. other tenants, so those who are not of those categories I just described, would get 1 year. That is not changed. What is changing is the eligible funding benefits, or the housing assistance, if you will, for eligible tenants. Again, the 3 groups that I described, that would go from $10,000 to $15,000. For all other tenants, that would go from $6,000 to $10,000. What it doesn't change is the fact that tenants have a right of first refusal, the right to purchase, but the timing for that has changed. It was 90 days before, it's going to be 120 days now. The other changes predominantly deal with the new permitting process. The previous law did not have it. This law, or this version, creates it. It's a, as we discussed at length, it is a process where Office of Housing Stability will be kind of doing a first vetting, if you will, and confirmation that they've done a conversion plan for those that apply, or that are required to do so. ISD then follows it up with whether they would give the conversion permit or not. And that's, I guess, for my clarification, that does not involve the ZBA. That's just going to be straight to exact. Okay, just making sure. And then there will be tenant, of course, tenant notifications. Originally, it was only sent to the tenant, or we tried to, but oftentimes we couldn't find the tenant. And now the notification will be sent to the tenant, ISD, and OHS as well. This is the landlord's obligation. And then we have a stronger look back for empty buildings, which I'm very excited about. And this current version clarifies that demolition or changes are covered by the ordinance, so that if it wasn't really clear before, now even if you're getting rid of the building in order to create 4, or that was 4 before, this clarifies that there is no concern about that. And then also we create a fine structure for those that violate the ordinance, and that would be the $300 a day maximum fine that ISD can enforce. That does not replace the fact that the landlord would still have to pay the tenants their move out or their housing assistance monies. It is actually on top of that. So it's a punishment, and then they still would have to pay that. The goal, hopefully, is that we aren't enforcing this after the fact, and with tenants who are already displaced living in Brockton, who just found out about their rights and, are trying to fight for them in court. The goal is to make sure that we actually deal with this so far upstream that it becomes part of the culture of when you are going to convert a 4-unit apartment building to condos, you just understand this is the way that business is done. And if people have to leave, that you are part of helping the solution to help them find other housing, and that you follow the process and the law accordingly. So I think that unless I missed anything, Tim, Mac, Sheila.
I have 2 small little things.
Yeah.
You also fixed a just cause problem that existed in the prior ordinance, and I appreciate you fixing that. And also, there's a provision in here which recognizes that sometimes all that the owner may be wanting to do to get the permit for is to actually sell units as they turn over, but may not want to displace. And so there's a provision in here for what's called a limited permit for just those purposes, but then makes explicit that basically there's not displacement happening and so forth. And so those tenants can basically remain in peace. And that's been a function of the law for a while, but it's not been as clear, I think. And so I think spelling it out in paperwork that everyone receives, that's what it's all about, will be helpful.
I also hope that I think it would actually complement the push by Councillor Bach, especially for more housing cooperative, where the goal is that the people are staying there. They're now becoming owners of the building collectively. So that actually really helps to make sure that they're not seen as having to pay or do anything for those folks who are now becoming new owners staying in place. So this is really exciting too. Thank you for those 2 points, Mac. And so unless there's any other questions or suggestions from my colleagues or from from the city. I'm going to go ahead and mark this up for vote for next week as is. I think honestly we've gotten we've closed a massive loophole. We closed a massive loophole, and the other ones it looks like we're going to have to go to the state for other ones. And as we get more creative, but I again, congratulations, Tim, Sheila, Mac, Ryan, Chris. Thank you for your incredible work. I know Dominique and OHS as well. I thank her and all of them for their work as well. I think, and Adam, we mentioned him earlier, just remembering him from the law department as well. Congrats. So without further delay, calling it a day.
Good job. Good job, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.